Congratulations. You just crossed $1 trillion. Not on paper, real, liquid, yours. You check the number 3 times. It doesn't change. Your hands are actually shaking. The richest person alive isn't even close to you anymore. You could buy their entire company with what you make in a slow month. Your phone explodes. Not vibrates, explodes. 400 notifications in 10 minutes. You mute it. But there's a problem. Everyone knows. Your face is on every screen on the planet before you've even brushed your teeth. There are people outside your gate right now. Not 10, not 50, 200 and counting. This is a threat now. So you fix it the way a trillionaire fixes things. You call for security. Not a guy with a suit and an earpiece. A full unit, 16 operators, snipers on the roofline, a blast-resistant vehicle waiting in the driveway before lunch. This is presidential-level protection. For one person, you, good. You're safe. But your car is a problem now, too. Your daily driver, the one you loved, the one that used to feel fast, looks like a toy parked outside a mansion this size. So you buy the company that makes hypercars. Not a car. The whole manufacturer, $3 billion. Your accountant doesn't even blink. That's a rounding error on your morning coffee's percentage of net worth. Your house is next. It's already surrounded. Paparazzi camped on the sidewalk like it's a stakeout. So you buy an island. Not a house on an island, the island. 22 acres of private coastline. One bridge in, a gate that costs more than most people's entire net worth just to maintain. You move in a full staff by the weekend. A chef named Marcus, poached from a 2-star kitchen in Lyon. 2 drivers, groundskeepers. A private doctor, Dr. Okafor, on call 24 hours. Within 29 days, 71 people report to you. You've met 6 of them by name. Everything runs. Everything's handled, so you get bored. And boredom, at this level, is expensive. You buy a jet the size of a commercial airliner and gut the inside. Bedroom, screening room, full kitchen, $410 million. You commission a super yacht with a helicopter pad and its own submarine, $700 million. You don't blink either. Here's what nobody warns you about. The money grows faster than you can spend it. Sitting in the most boring index fund on Earth, your net worth climbs $60 million a day. You wake up richer every single morning, whether you did anything or not. So the money is solved. The house is solved. The cars, the jet, the yacht, solved. But you want a burger. A regular burger from the place you used to go to in college. Your security team needs an hour of lead time now just for that. When you finally walk in, the entire restaurant goes silent. The cashier's hands shake taking your order. Someone in the corner is filming you and not even hiding it. The burger tastes exactly the same. Nothing else does. You stop going, you try to do good with it, you write a check for $600 million to fund clean water access for an entire region. The story trends for one day, then a columnist runs the math live on camera and says it's a rounding error, and technically he's right, and somehow that's worse than if he'd said nothing at all. Your phone still doesn't stop ringing, but the calls change. Nobody's calling to check on you anymore. They're calling because they need something. Lawyers, fund managers, a senator's chief of staff. Your name is now a line item in other people's business plans. Old friends go quiet first. The ones who still call sound different, careful like they're rehearsing the sentence before they say it. Your college roommate Dev visits for a weekend. He agrees with everything you say, laughs at jokes that aren't funny. He used to argue with you about everything, politics, movies, which restaurant was better. Now he just nods. That friendship used to be the realest thing in your life. Now it's the first thing money quietly killed, and neither of you says it out loud. Then the lawsuits start, 23 of them in 111 days. A man claims you owe him from a handshake deal a decade ago you don't remember making. A woman says you promised her a donation at an event you can prove you weren't even at. Most of it is nonsense. Your legal team uses the word frivolous so many times it stops meaning anything. But every single one costs 6 figures to fight and puts your name back in a headline. And every headline invites 5 more lawsuits behind it. By year's end, your legal bill alone crosses $60 million. You have never met most of the lawyers working your cases full-time. They send you weekly summaries instead, pages of strangers, each one certain you owe them something. Then you meet someone real. Her name is Elena. At a private dinner set up by a friend who swears it isn't a setup. She's funny in a way you weren't expecting, And 3 dates in, she still hasn't mentioned the money once. Then you notice she knows your pilot's name, knows your favorite table at a restaurant you never told her about. Small things. Things that mean she looked you up before you ever said hello. Of course she did. Everyone does now. But the question sits behind every good moment with her after that. Does she like you, or does she like the version of life standing next to you? You can't unknow that question once it's in your head. 2 weeks later, a photo leaks. Not from her, not from you. A waiter who recognized you both and made a call. By morning, her name is a headline next to yours. Her job, her apartment, her entire private life turned into content for strangers to comment on. You erased her old life just by sitting across from her at dinner. You send Elena an apology. She reads it. She doesn't answer. Your mother calls one Sunday. Same voice as always, asking if you're eating enough. For 10 minutes, you forget what your life has become. Then she mentions your brother James. He's behind on his mortgage. He'd never ask you directly. Too proud. But she's asking for him. You wire him the money that same afternoon. He doesn't call to say thank you. 91 days later, at a family dinner you flew everyone in for, James sits at the far end of the table, talks to your cousins, your aunt, anyone but you. When you catch his eye, he looks down at his plate instead. A week later, your mother calls again, quieter this time. James told your cousin the money changed everything, that he lost his brother the day the money came in. You can't undo a jet. You can't unspend anything. You can't walk into his house without 2 security cars idling in his driveway now, whether you want them there or not. So you stop trying to fix it. You let the silence sit. The island keeps running whether you're paying attention or not. 71 staff humming along like a machine. You take strange comfort in the routine until your head of security calls a meeting you didn't ask for. Someone on staff has been selling details to a tabloid. Small things, consistent and paid for. It takes the team 2 days to trace it back to a single hallway, a single camera angle, a single person with access. It's Rosa, your longtime housekeeper, the one who's been with you since before any of this, 11 years since your very first apartment. She's escorted off the property on a Tuesday morning, carrying a single box, and she never once looks back at the house. You watch Rosa go from an upstairs window. Nobody says anything. There's nothing left to say. That night you can't sleep. You walk the empty halls at 3 a.m., 60-plus rooms, and every single one is dark. A security camera in the hallway swivels, tracking you as you move. The only proof, at 3 a.m., that anyone else knows you exist. You go outside. The grass is wet. The sky above the island is the exact same sky you used to look at from a fire escape, back when rent was late and none of this existed yet. The stars haven't moved an inch. Everything underneath them has. You come back a week later from a trip you can't even remember the point of. Nadia meets you on the tarmac, asks how it was. Fine, you say, because that's easier than the truth. You walk past the pool nobody uses, past the private theater that sat dark for months, past a wine cellar worth more than most people's houses, into an office with 7 monitors, where your name is already trending again before you've sat down. Outside, the shift change happens on schedule. New faces replace the old ones, the way they always do now. The groundskeeper crosses the lawn on the mower, same as every morning. 71 people keep this place alive. You're the only one who actually lives here. 6 months in, the world stops treating you like a person and starts treating you like an institution. A country's central bank adjusts its forecast based on a rumor about where you might invest next quarter. You didn't say a word. You didn't have to. Your existence alone moves markets now. A university offers you an honorary degree you never studied for, hoping you'll donate a building in return. You say no. They ask again a month later, phrased differently, hoping you won't notice it's the same request. You start declining things by instinct before you even hear the full pitch. Priority requests, urgent calls. Everything is urgent now. Nothing actually is. One night, your assistant, Nadia, flags something different. A message from Dr. Whitfield, your old college professor, the one who lent you lab equipment when you had nothing. No ask attached, just 2 lines, nothing more, hoping you're still yourself somewhere under all of this. You read it 4 times. You call her back that same night, and for 20 minutes you're not a headline. You're just someone she remembers arguing with about a failed experiment at 2 a.m. in a basement lab that smelled like burnt wiring. She's the only person who's called you in months who didn't want anything. You start keeping a short list after that. People who never once mentioned the number. It's shorter than you'd like. You guard it carefully. The paranoia arrives without an invitation. You start noticing exits in every room before you sit down. You stop finishing sentences on the phone out of habit, even with people you trust completely. A car idles too long outside the gate one evening and your pulse spikes before your brain even catches up to why. Your doctor runs a full panel and tells you flatly that your body is reading like someone under sustained combat stress, not once, continuously, for months. You laugh it off in the appointment. You don't laugh about it later, alone, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., doing math about how many more mornings you can run on 4 hours of sleep before something breaks. You go back to your hometown once, quietly, 2 operators trailing a block behind, pretending to be tourists. Your old apartment building looks smaller than you remember. Different curtains in your old window. A different name on the buzzer where yours used to be. You stand across the street longer than you mean to, the way people linger outside a house they used to call home. You buy a coffee at the shop on the corner. The new hire behind the counter doesn't recognize you, doesn't follow the news, never has. And for 90 seconds, you're just a customer. 90 seconds of a version of your life you can't afford to live anymore, in the one currency that actually matters now. Someone 2 tables over looks up, recognizes you, reaches for their phone, the 90 seconds end. You leave before the coffee's even finished. By the next morning, a blurry video of you at a coffee shop is a headline, guessing your net worth wrong by a factor of 10, and somehow that doesn't even surprise you anymore. You drive back to the island in silence, and for the first time since this all started, you let yourself actually think the sentence you've been avoiding for months. Nobody warned you that winning this big would ever feel this much like losing.